Hey yo folks, it's Soul with another video. A while back I talked briefly about allied races in Shadowlands, WoW's upcoming expansion, and I said aloud, nah, it's not gonna be a thing, because consider the races that we'll be meeting in the Shadowlands, basically, dead things who already dealt with the fun and wonders of living. Naturally, I'm assuming that those who exist in the Shadowlands will want to stay in the Shadowlands. It's sort of hard to imagine the Kyrians, these beings who worked their way into what I guess is enjoyable servitude, would then be interested in joining the Alliance, or worse, the Horde. Well, think bias. But then I started thinking for a little bit, and you know what? I've changed my mind. Yeah, new races can be introduced in the Shadowlands expansion. In fact, it'd be really easy. We just need to deconstruct what we're used to and approach the idea of introducing new races in a way that makes sense. Fans often ask the general question of when is this and this going to happen? When will we get the Tuskar as an allied race? Or when will we get to Ilaria and Terralion? When will we get to see the Dragon Isles? And the general reply is that we'll get to those, we want to get to those, but we'll just shelve it for later when it makes sense. The same goes for allied races. That's because the feature of allied races was introduced in the context of Battle for Azeroth, a feature that's tied directly to the idea of having a race choose a side so they can survive the coming conflict. Many players weren't happy with the idea of the High Mountain Tauren joining the Horde exclusively, after members of both factions contributed equally to their surviving the war against the Burning Legion. I'm in fact one of those unhappy players. But after the story's written, we can grumble, we don't have to like it, but that's the lore now. Throughout Battle for Azeroth, 10 allied races were added, mostly in the context of, hey, help your fellow faction, and it made sense. Humans joined other humans, orcs joined other orcs, and elves, well, okay, whatever. It mostly made sense. But the war is over, although Tyrande would want to tell you otherwise. Meanwhile, the thirst for additional races to come to WoW hasn't nearly been sated. So how do we approach new races going forward? The easy solution is to actually go backward. Let's go back to the old method of getting new races and just get them right out of the expansion's box. The formula works, so why not? Okay, here's why not. Going back to the old ways means not getting a new race until, well, the next expansion, so that's like 2 years. Sure, we'll get a robust introduction, maybe a capital city that you'll visit once and then almost literally never again, but hey, principle, right? A new race can still be brought in this way where it makes sense, but let's try something different, something a bit more radical, a compromise between meeting player demand while not being overly bloated in the implementation of a new race. What Blizzard has to do is very simple. First, let's stop calling them allied races. Let's get rid of that premise that a race seeks to join the Horde or the Alliance because they want to kill or maim, or otherwise ruin the day of the opposite faction. Right now, that's a shackle that restricts us as fans and armchair developers from thinking of different ideas. Blizzard has said that the story needs to make sense, but in all of reality, any story can be made up. Every story can make sense. It just depends on how it's written. And I'll get to a few examples to get your brain thinking, because that's what you're here for, right? To stimulate you and not just pander to Blizzard haters farming negativity for clicks, right? Oh, crap. So let's use Shadowlands as an example. I'm just speculating here, but I think the approach to Shadowlands' story will be very similar to the Warlords of Draenor story. By that, I mean that the events of Shadowlands are going to be largely contained to the Shadowlands, just like Warlord's story was limited to the garrison, Draenor. If you recall, Warlords began with the invasion of the Iron Horde. We beat them back into the portal, but not before a few of them broke through all the way over to Blackrock Spire, where we then ran up there and finished them off. And that was pretty much it. Over on Azeroth, nothing else really happened. There was peace, basically. Okay, it was more like there was war elsewhere, but you know what I mean. I'm predicting that the same is likely to happen in Shadowlands. Over on Azeroth, the dead will rise, prompting a worldwide response. But after that, after the champions of Azeroth hurl themselves into the Shadowlands, not a lot is going to happen on Azeroth, other than of course that massive rift and a sword in its butt, whatever. That means all sorts of side stories can happen on Azeroth, all sorts of side stories that could result in a race joining a faction. This is not a revolutionary idea. Side races, sub-races, filler races, call them whatever you want. But the future of Warcraft's additional races can be introduced mostly independently of whatever expansion they're introduced in. It doesn't have to be tied to the expansion's plot, but there can and probably should be some restrictions. These sub-races probably won't have a robust selection of classes to choose from. I mean, like a Furbolg warrior? Sure, why not? A Furbolg demon hunter? Okay, probably not. Classes that are tied to deep lore, like demon hunters, paladins, and druids, ought to preserve their less inclusive status. General classes like warriors, death knights, hunters, and monks are shared by nearly all the races, so these sub-races will be treated no differently. Not every race is going to have an awesome capital city. The Gilbin of Newhome will spawn in Newhome. That's the long and short of it. Also important, unlocking these new race and class combinations aren't the same thing as an entire race joining a particular faction. So the Jinyu probably don't care to join the Alliance as an entire race, and I'm sure that none of them really care for the Horde, but individuals within the Jinyu are more than welcome to decide to work alongside the Alliance. That's the distinction that we're trying to make here. But while every sub-race will have their own unlocking quest, not all of these quests will be made equal. Not every one will be an epic romp with multiple cutscenes and voiceovers. But I do believe that there should be very low unlock requirements, maybe none at all, except for maybe a level requirement, I guess?
Wow, here's my comment about Blizzard wanting time played argument something.
Thank you for contributing to the discussion. I'll get more specific in just a bit, but consider this. Instead of dedicating an excessive amount of time to unlock a race, instead give players that time to just play as that race. It's nuts, I know, but I urge Blizzard to consider that. So now I'm going to give a few examples of sub-races with the following things in mind: that they can be introduced at any time, any expansion, any patch, and that they have relatively easy requirements followed by a quest line to tell their story. That's about it. We can get into race and class combinations down in the comments. I'm not going to really mention that here. So, of course, these examples are all obviously fan fiction. I only ask that you consider the spirit of this idea and not dwell on the specifics. So in other words, just make up your own damn racial abilities, okay? Let's start with the Hosen and the Jinyu, who will join the Horde and the Alliance respectively because, well, they did it before. The Hosen, maybe they can join mostly as a collective. I mean, they like the Horde's inclusiveness, I'm going to guess, or they just like the Horde style, so they sign up. Their questline is something akin to having a big-ass party and you participate in the antics. The Jinyu as a whole, maybe they don't care to join the Alliance like I mentioned earlier, but a certain nameless champion might want to see the world and reaches out to you. You accompany them on a journey throughout Pandaria, and when it's done, they decide to venture to new lands, only that they're wearing Alliance colors. So you effectively play as this nameless Jinyu champion. To access the quest lines that unlock these races, you're going to have to complete the Jade Forest Zone quest line, which tells their original story. See? It's not so bad, and it's not as contrived as needing some sort of exalted reputation. Many of you have already completed these requirements anyway, and you can immediately access this quest. Now for the Tonka, who officially did join the Horde all the way back in the days of Northrend, but they never really ended up actually joining the Horde. So you unlock their questline simply by completing their original questline on Dragonblight, and you get one follow-up quest, just one. So in this quest, the Tonka chieftain just asks you,
so we're a part of the Horde now, right?
And when you answer yes, that's it, their race is unlocked. Genius. Alright, so High Elves for the Alliance. Sure, why not? That'll really get the YouTube comments going, right? The High Elves who already joined the Alliance aren't what they used to be. mostly populating Dalaran and Stormwind, many of them are signing up with Alleria to become the oh-so-depressing Void Elves. But there are those who want to work alongside the Alliance, just not under Alleria, who is as suspicious as she is attractive. Meow. Apart from the blue eyes, these elves are a bit more rugged than their other counterparts, less sword and sorcery, and maybe more sword? Their questline deserves a bit of love though, I think, so I would like to explore the story of these high elves ever since their exile from Silvermoon, like a big old flashback. But you gotta earn this one. So to unlock the questline for the high elves, you need to complete the entirety of the 4th War campaign in Battle for Azeroth. Moving on, when the Maghar joined the Horde, they didn't just bring a bunch of orcs, they brought a collection of displaced races from AU Draenor who were all seeking a new life. Among them are the Blackfang and the Arakoa. So to access the quests for these races, first you pretty much need to unlock the Maghar allied race, which is grindy, but I mean you're getting a 3-for-1 deal, so I'm just throwing ideas out there, okay? The quest for these races involves traveling to Outland, where a number of them have went to try and make sense of what has happened to them and to their otherworldly counterparts, and then for whatever reason they're like, okay, we'll just join you now. In the case of races like these, who are a bit more monstrous, I'm thinking that their attack animations would make less use of weapons, so basically make them fight like monks do, with their weapons sheathed. That's just another idea. Finally, the Valajar, the Warriors of Odin. To unlock this race, just complete the Stormheim Zone storyline and complete the Halls of Valor dungeon, and then the Trials of Valor raid. You'll receive a quest to attend a grand banquet of the Valajar, even if you're not a warrior class. Like, it's okay, you're cool with them. Celebratory duels, getting wasted, people dying, getting wasted, the works. It's like the Hosen partied, but the Valajar, they like party. At the end of the craziness, Odin addresses the banquet and issues a decree, a symphony of battle. He tells his Valajar to leave Skyhold and join the battles of the mortal races, not for love or justice, not for Azeroth, for fun.
Hone your skills and temper yourself for the endless war to come.
Something jovial like that. In this case, the Valajar are a truly neutral race who can join either faction. Imagine an additional quest line. Okay, let's try to imagine this, where you're being drafted. You as a Valajar are being drafted by the many factions on Azeroth, from the Fel Totem to the Amethet to the Twilight Cultists, the Defias Brotherhood, maybe Nathanos is there somehow. But ultimately, as a Valajar, you end up choosing either the Horde or the Alliance. So Odin doesn't care if fellow Valajar end up fighting each other. In fact, that's probably his idea of fun. So those are just a few small ideas on how to implement sub-races, not allied races, sub-races in the world of Warcraft. They're not as high profile as races or allied races. In fact, some may only have like 3 or 4 possible class combinations instead of what we're used to. But these races can be introduced anytime because they're detached from the expansion's overall story. In fact, it kind of helps us to reconnect to some of these older places that we visited in the past. But let me know what races that you would like to see in WoW, and have fun with this one. Give it a little backstory and maybe a quest line to go with it, because who knows how this is going to pan out in the future. Thanks for watching, and if this was a fun one, hit that like button and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. We'll see you later. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.